My crazy mother-in-law tried sabotaging my entire career because I refused to perform surgery on my brother-in-law for free. I cut contact with them, so they started harassing me and my wife. I'm a doctor, and recently my mother-in-law asked me to perform surgery on her son for free, but I told her no. When she asked me why, I said that quite frankly, I simply despise my brother-in-law. I hate him for how he made fun of us doctors while the virus was widespread, how he called me stupid for recommending vaccines to my baby cousin's parents, how he told the family he's pretty sure I cheated in medical school. She had the audacity to tell me that was just a joke, but I told her that jokes like that can cost me my career, and I wouldn't be doing it. After I got off the phone, my wife Jessica begged me to be the bigger person and to help out her brother, but I once again said no. I wasn't going to help someone who made my life a living hell. When I told her this, she tried to convince me more, saying that family came first and pleading to find it in my heart to help him. Her brother Mike had a way of getting into my wife's ear and getting whatever he wanted out of Jessica, since he was her younger brother. A few years ago, around the time, Jessica and I were planning our wedding. We had everything carefully planned and budgeted, but Mike had other ideas. He wanted us to hire his friend's band for the reception. Their band was way out of our budget, and frankly, not to our taste. He tried to convince Jessica, saying that their band was amazing and would make our night unforgettable, but Jessica told him that we already had a DJ booked and that we were tight on our budget. Mike continued reminding her of the time that he helped her with the down payment for her first car and the time she was short on rent in college. He then said that she knew that Mom would love it and that she always said she wanted Mike more involved with planning the wedding. Think about how happy it would make her, he said to Jessica. The final blow was when he said that I could afford the band with me being a successful doctor after all. What's a little extra expense to him? He asked Jessica. She eventually broke down and added them to the wedding. He had successfully convinced her it was a good idea, and as we went home together that night, she kept talking about how good it would be for the band to perform at the wedding. I couldn't tell if she was trying to convince me or herself. I told her that we already had a plan and that we couldn't keep changing things just because Mike wanted us to, and that's when she pulled the family card on me. She asked if I could just do it one time for the family, and I reluctantly agreed. The band ended up being mediocre at best, but Mike got what he wanted, as always. And fast forward to now, I'm getting the same puppy eyes and family plea that I got years ago. I reminded her of all the times that Mike belittled my profession and me, but it seemed like water under the bridge for Jessica. 2 years ago, when I was up for a partnership at a prestigious clinic, it was a golden opportunity. The family had gathered at my mother-in-law Linda's house for dinner. I was excited to share the news with everyone and hopeful that even Mike would see this as a big achievement. As I explained the opportunity and how close I was to securing the partnership, I noticed Mike smirking. He said it was a step up and asked me if I was worried that someone else could get the position. I said of course I was, but from the way the founder was speaking, it seemed like he was interested in me. Jessica told Mike to think more positively, and he said to her that I shouldn't have anything to worry about as long as I didn't have any skeletons in my closet. I didn't know what he was talking about at the time, but I continued our conversation. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to ignore Mike's comments. I figured he was just trying to get under my skin, as usual. A few weeks later, just as I was preparing for the final review with the clinic's board, I received an anonymous email. It contained screenshots of forum posts and emails, all suggesting that I had been involved in malpractice. The accusations were baseless, but they were damaging enough to cast doubt. I was blindsided. I had no idea where these rumors had come from, but they were spreading like wildfire. My colleagues started treating me differently, and the board began to hesitate about my partnership. I needed to clear my name. I hired a private investigator. What they found was shocking, but, in hindsight, unsurprising. The anonymous posts and emails had all been traced back to a burner account linked to Mike. I was enraged. I went to Mike's house immediately to confront him. I told him that I knew he tried to sabotage my career and asked him what I did to deserve that. He told me that I always thought I was so perfect and tried to brag about my fancy doctor job. He said he was leveling the playing field. When Jessica found out, she was horrified. She went off on Mike and stopped speaking to him after that, but Mike eventually found his way back in. He always did. And even though I had evidence to prove my innocence, the damage was done. The clinic decided not to move forward with my partnership because they needed to protect their reputation. My career took a significant hit, but I was able to bounce back over the past few years. After I refused to do Mike's surgery, Linda and Mike wanted revenge. They began harassing me relentlessly. They call me at all hours, disrupting my sleep and work. They'd show up at the hospital, causing scenes and embarrassing me in front of my colleagues. One morning, I was in the middle of my rounds when I saw Mike in my waiting room near the reception desk. My heart sank. I had a bad feeling about this. As I approached the nurse's station, I overheard him talking to one of my patients. He started speaking loudly, saying that I refused to perform surgery on him because I didn't want to be responsible if something went wrong, and saying that I couldn't handle it. He said I was too scared to operate on him. The rest of the patients looked at me for my response. I tried to reassure them that it would be fine and not to worry about what Mike was saying. Then Mike got louder, saying that he wasn't done, and started discrediting my practice, and that I was a fraud. The other patients and staff were staring and began whispering. It felt like when I got rejected from the clinic all over again. I told Mike to leave, and went to the back to check on my patient, and when I returned, Mike was at it again, this time talking to the hospital administrator. He was going on about if his own brother-in-law didn't want to help him out, then why should the other patients trust him? He painted himself as a person who was genuinely concerned about the other patient's well-being, all the while trying to ruin my reputation again. I threatened to call the cops on him if he didn't leave, and he agreed, not without saying his last hurtful remarks. The next morning, I checked the hospital's Google reviews out of habit. My heart sank as I saw a slew of new negative reviews, all posted within the last 24 hours. They were filled with baseless accusations, painting me as an incompetent and uncaring doctor who refused to treat patients for personal reasons. One read, he refused to help his own family member in need. If he can do that to his own family, imagine what he'll do to strangers. Another read, beware, he prioritizes his personal grudges over patient care. The reviews were all anonymous, but I had no doubt they were made by Mike. Later that day, as I was walking out of the hospital, I saw Mike waiting near my car. I had enough. I told him that this had to stop now. He had crossed every line imaginable. He tried to paint me as the bad guy, saying that none of this would have happened if I had just performed the surgery on him. He said I brought it upon myself. I realized then that trying to reason with Mike was pointless. I got in my car and drove off. That night, Mike started posting on social media about me and the practice. He made posts about me being a bad person and an unfit doctor who cut corners. They even went as far as to say that I was purposefully neglecting a family member in need. Over the next few weeks, patients began to question my abilities, and my colleagues grew anxious. The smear campaign was taking a toll not only on my career, but also on my mental health, especially after I finally got my name cleared up from the accusations just years ago. One evening, after a hard day at the hospital, I sat Jessica down in our living room. I told her that I couldn't do the harassment anymore, and that they were destroying my reputation. For my peace of mind, I had to remove her mom and brother from my life. Her face was pale as she asked me to explain. I told her that I couldn't go to family functions acting happy with them while they were in the streets slandering my name and almost costing me my career twice. Her mom and brother still had Jessica wrapped around their finger. She said that she couldn't choose between me and her family, and that it wasn't fair that she had to make that decision. I told her that I'd give her a couple of days to make her decision. She said she didn't need that. She told me she loved me, and that she understood how much it hurt me to face them. She ultimately chose me. However, the decision didn't stop Linda and Mike. They turned their harassment towards Jessica. They accused her of being disloyal and cold-hearted. They called her repeatedly, sent hateful messages, and even showed up at her workplace, causing scenes and disrupting her life. Then, out of nowhere, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. It contained screenshots of conversations between Mike and another family member, revealing a plan to ruin my career if I didn't agree to the surgery. I was shocked, but not surprised. It was the final nail in the coffin. I showed Jessica the email. She couldn't believe that they would go that far, but I knew firsthand how vicious Mike was. This didn't surprise me, but I knew I had to put an end to it. Jessica decided to confront her family. She arranged a meeting with Linda and Mike and brought the screenshots with her. They thought that she was meeting with them to give them the news that I agreed to do the surgery, but they quickly realized what the meeting was about when I joined her and laid the papers on the table. The confrontation was heated. Mike denied everything at first, but when faced with the proof, he became defensive. Jessica asked Mike why he would do such a thing when I did nothing to him, and he said that I was never good enough for Jessica and that I was weak. I guess this was his plan to show her that. She always placed Mike as the #1 guy in her life for years, since he was her little brother, and now he just seemed jealous because he didn't have her attention anymore. After Mike's doings were affecting her personal life, she realized how destructive they really were and how her mom was an enabler this entire time. She decided to cut them off as well, blocking their numbers and social media accounts. Jessica and I were left to deal with the emotional fallout. We had hoped that cutting ties would bring peace, but instead, it left a void that was hard to fill. Jessica struggled with guilt and sadness after losing her relationship with her family, while I tried to put together the broken pieces of my professional reputation and deal with stress from the ordeal. In the weeks that followed, Jessica and I focused on rebuilding our lives. I sought therapy to help cope with the stress and trauma of the past months, while Jessica leaned on a support group. My colleagues eventually started to see me for what I really was, and not the Mike narrative that was going around. They offered support and encouragement. Through time, I restored my confidence. Gradually, the rumors and accusations began to fade, and my reputation as a skilled and compassionate surgeon was reinstated. Jessica, too, found new strength. She immersed herself in her work and hobbies, finding new friends who supported her unconditionally. A few months later, I received a surprising letter from Linda. She apologized for everything, admitting she was wrong to side with Mike without understanding the full situation. She asked for a chance to mend the relationship. I showed the letter to Jessica and asked what she thought about it. Jessica read it and began crying. She said that we could give her mom another chance, but she said she wasn't ready for Mike. I agreed and told her that we could take one step at a time to protect our peace. We decided to meet Linda at a local coffee shop and set clear boundaries from the start. I was unsure the reunion would go smoothly, but I was hopeful. Mike, on the other hand, showed no remorse. He continued his life without me and Jessica. Years later, Jessica and I have built a happy life together. We've learned to cherish our relationship and the family we've chosen to build around us. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Jessica looked at me and smiled. We'd been through so much, but I wouldn't change a thing. It brought us here together, and we were stronger than ever. I took her hand, and at that moment, we knew that we'd made the right choices.